The first squad of a Six Nations, the first squad of any season is always massive, and England have named theirs today. Welcome back to the channel. It is Tuesday and England brought their team announcement forward, so we now know the match day 23 that is going to be taking on Ireland in Dublin this weekend, and what a challenge they have in front of them. So as I say, welcome back. Give me your comments. What do you make of the 23 that has been selected? I think quite a few of the selections were pretty obvious. I think there are others that are a bit more surprising. So you can have your say in the comments section. And whilst you're here, I would absolutely love it if you like the video and if you subscribe to the channel. So it's one of those things. It was probably about an hour ago, I finished recording a video for my England match day 23 to play Ireland because I thought they'd name their squad later in the week. And then I got word that the squad was being named today. So here we are. My squad is now irrelevant because we have the actual squad. And this is what it is. I'll go through it position by position. So let's start off in the front row, shall we? Ellis Genge, Luke Cowan-Dickie, Will Stewart. I think with the injury to Jamie George, with the fact that Joe Marler has retired, Dan Cole wasn't selected, I feel like this was always going to be the front row that they went with, the front row that Steve Borthwick went with. Genge is clearly the most experienced and best loose head that England have. And Will Stewart on the tight head side, I think with Dan Cole not there, you always felt like he was going to be who they view as their best option. So I don't think there's too many surprises there in the front row. Had Jamie George been fit, personally, I would have seen him start. I know there has been some discussion about Jamie George's position, and part of the reason possibly that there was a change in the captaincy was because it wasn't sure whether George would still be the starter week in, week out for England. For me, he is still England's best hooker, but I tell you what, Luke Cowan-Dickie is a pretty damn good name to be able to call into the team as the starter once Jamie George is injured. And I think in particular for Theo Dan actually here, if we cast our eye to the bench for just a second, he was a player who came into the England setup in 2023, World Cup year, had a really good year, maybe plateaued a little bit last year, wasn't all his fault. For the most part, he was involved in an England team that weren't playing that well. He was obviously always coming off the bench because Jamie George, as the captain, started. So he was coming into matches and then the team weren't winning games. So it wasn't exactly the best environment for Theo Dan to kick on. But I think it could be a big year for him, particularly the start of this Six Nations. If Jamie George is injured, definitely going to be missing the first couple of rounds. Good opportunity for Theo Dan, I think, to kick on. He's clearly proven that he has the capabilities. He has what it takes, I think, to be successful at this level. Let's see him do it on a more consistent basis. Let's see him have an impact off the bench that England was sorely missing in the autumn. And we'll get on to the rest of the bench in just a moment. In terms of the front row replacements on the props, Finn Baxter and Joe Hayes. Any surprises there? I thought it would be Bevan Rod and who do I think it would be on the tight head side? Possibly Asher Opoku-Forjol was kind of the direction that I thought England could well be going in, but in the end they've gone there. I know Joe Hayes has actually been having a really good year with Leicester, knows Borthwick very, very well, and Finn Baxter had a great couple of test matches, didn't he, in New Zealand for his debut last year, coming off the bench. I thought held himself really well, conducted himself really well, so maybe actually there's not too much complaint, but as I say, my instinct was that they go in a different direction. But that's the front row. Into the second row, Maro Itoje, George Martin. Itoje, obviously always going to start, always does start for England, pretty much since he came into the team all those years ago. George Martin keeps his spot. I think that's the correct decision. He didn't have a great autumn, and he wasn't the only one. What he brings to the game is his physicality, his hits, a lot of hard work, but I think he got exposed a little bit defensively in the autumn. And so I wondered whether, with the return of Chessum, would he replace Martin? Would Chessum start at 6? He's on the bench, so we'll get onto that. And I'm glad to see George Martin there because he has displayed previously that he has what it takes at international level. Like his performance in the World Cup semi-final against the Springboks, it was when he announced himself really internationally, wasn't he? He was exceptional. We've seen some areas that he maybe struggled in the autumn. International rugby is difficult, but I like that he's still there because I think he clearly has what it takes to be a very, very good international second row. And what better player to learn from than Maro Itoje? Into the back row, this is probably going to be a lot of people's headlines from the team selection. Double curry. Tom Curry and Ben Curry start. First time for England. Ben Earl continues at number 8. What's the reason for this, do we think, with England? In particular, thinking about Ireland and how competitive the match is going to be, particularly in the back row, how good the Irish back row is. I honestly thought they would go for Ollie Chessum. I think in not having Chessum and having both the Curry brothers, I think you lose something in your line-out. I know they are options in the line-out as well, but Chessum's that kind of rangy, little bit more maybe what Courtney Lawes was when he played 6 for England, kind of a second row that's just 6. But in the Curry boys, I guess you get 2 players that are more of a threat over the breakdown with the Jackal, and 2 players that will win you the gain line or put you in a good place to try and win the gain line. Those I think are the 2 main reasons, right? And actually, Borthwick has spoken about this, that in the Premiership, there are less turnovers on the floor. Like the Jackal is less of a thing in the style of rugby we see in the Premiership. In international rugby, it's absolutely crucial. So Tom Curry, Ben Curry, I think that is probably why he has gone for those players. What is really fascinating, though, about this back row is Chessum on the bench, Chandler Cunningham himself and Tom Willis, because that is a way more punchy, far more strength on that England bench than we saw in the autumn. And we knew what a big issue that was. Consistently, the England replacements were not having the impact that they needed to, essentially. In the last quarter of games, when England often were leading, would end up losing. I love that Chessum is back. I expected him to start, but what an option to bring off the bench with everything he brings into the game. Chandler Cunningham himself for 25 minutes at the end of a test match. Remember what he was like in the first almost half an hour of Harlequins' victory against Bordeaux in the Champions Cup last year. Strong carries, big tackles, gets in your face. What a great bench option. And Tom Willis. Now, I think there will be quite a few of you, I think, that will say, why isn't Tom Willis starting? I don't have a problem with Ben Earl starting. He's been one of England's best players for the last 2 years. I think that shirt is his. Tom Willis has been the best number 8 in the Premiership because Saracens play Earl at 7. But again, I look at that bench and I look at the impact, and I think Tom Willis coming off the bench, you could say the same if it was Ben Earl as well, don't get me wrong. So it's kind of horses for courses. But I don't really have that much of a problem of Tom Willis coming off the bench. I love that he is there, by the way. And I think he could play his way into the 8 jersey. But for the time being, I really like the makeup of that back row for the task at hand and the impact that that bench will try and have. No real complaints from me. Let me know what you make of it. Into the backs. Alex Mitchell starts. England were doing everything they could to ensure he starts. One of the features of the autumn, along with Chessum, that he was a guy whose stock rose even more because of how much England missed him. Yes, he's been injured, but he's back in. Makes a difference to the attack, I think. It interests me that they've gone with Harry Randall as the replacement scrum half. Now, perhaps it shouldn't be a shock because Randall was the scrum half that was originally named in the team along with Mitchell and Jack Van Poortvliet. Van Poortvliet's injured. They brought in Raffi Quirk and Ben Spencer. I just wonder whether they were going to go with Raffi Quirk. In the end, it's Harry Randall. And as a pair of 9s, you have got bags of pace in it, haven't you? And Steve Borthwick has spoken about this being an England team that has more athleticism than it previously has, particularly in the back line. Maybe the selection of Randall is a statement saying we want to play at pace. We want our 9 to come on and we want to continue playing at pace. We want to try and stretch Ireland in attack. So great opportunity for Randall. I thought it might have been Quirk, but there we go. I wonder if we'll see Quirk this Six Nations, by the way. I still think the England management have an eye on Raffi Quirk and think there is a future, loads of caps in terms of a 9 and what the attributes he's have. I think he'd have way more caps. He's just had so many injuries for Sale. Marcus Smith continues at 10. Finn Smith on the bench. I don't have an issue with this at all. I thought Marcus Smith was really good for England, even in a team that was losing with what he did in attack. Maybe the attack as a whole needs to work more, but I think the performances individually of Marcus Smith was excellent. I think he will benefit from having Alex Mitchell back as well, and keeping the combination of your 10, 12, 13, the continuity, keeping it settled rather than chopping and changing, I think is a big thing that those England coaches are looking at. And that brings me on to the centres. Henry Slade at 12 is possibly going to be one of the biggest complaints in this team, which I get. I'm not over the moon about it. I don't think he is a 12, but you want Lawrence at 13. So do you bring in Dingwall? I want a better option at 12 for England, but I also think at some point you need an element of continuity. And maybe you look at it, and this could be what they're looking at it and saying, Mitchell being back will make our attack better. Let's stick with the centres for now and see where we get to. Because I don't think there is, and I know Northampton fans will say, get Dingwall in there, he's brilliant week in, week out. I don't think England quite yet have a 12 that you're saying absolutely nailed on, they should be there. I think loads of you will disagree with me with that. And I don't love that Slade is playing 12 at all, but actually for the time being, I'm kind of like, well, let's build up the combinations at least. That's where my head is anyway. And Finn Smith on the bench. Loads of you I know will want Finn Smith to start. I like Marcus Smith starting. I'd like it if Finn Smith was starting. I think they're both brilliant options. I mean, when you've got like a 90-odd capper in George Ford that isn't even part of the matchday squad, I think England's stocks at fly half are pretty sky high. And I know there's a bit of a, probably not the video to talk about it really because he's not in this squad, but the bit of disrespect, I think, towards George Ford and what he brings for England, the brain he brings, the rugby brain, the experience he's had, all that, the caps of people kind of saying, you've got to get rid of him. I still think George Ford at some point has a role to play. But yeah, Finn Smith, Marcus Smith, the Smiths, those are the fly-half options. Back three, a debut for Cadan Murley. Quins fans will love to see it. Most Gallagher Premiership fans will love to see it. We've been calling for him to get an opportunity for ages. I'm absolutely delighted for him. And I think his selection in this back three is quite important. So Tommy Freeman has been there. We expected him to be named. Freddie Stewart, we expected to be named at fullback because George Furbank is injured. And when you look at the other options, I know Slightholme's been really good. The ball carrying, the explosiveness, I think Murley gives you something a bit different. I know Slightholme's excellent with ball in hand as well, but I think it's about time we see Cadan Murley. And when you don't have Faye Waboso, you are missing a little bit of, I don't know, X factor, kind of that real game-breaking player in that back three. I know Roebuck's a really good player as well, Sale fans will be saying, but do you know what I mean? Like in terms of that like pure game-breaking ability, maybe Slightholme has that as well, but I think Cadan Murley's a really good option. I think he's important for England in this game. And I'm delighted that he gets his debut. I'll leave it there because I've been going on for a little while. What do you make of that team? A few surprises in there. Willis on the bench, I think a lot of you will want him to start. I think quite a few won't be happy with Henry Slade starting, which I understand, but I'm not sure that there's the obvious option, and sometimes you're better off building continuity and continuing to build your foundations, which might be an unpopular point of view, but that is kind of where I am with it at the moment. So let me know. Comment down below, what do you make of this England team? Can this England team go to Dublin and win? They're going to be underdogs. It would be a big upset. It would be a hell of a scalp if they were to do it. But they could. They could. I don't know if it's going to happen. We'll wait and see what Team Ireland select. But they could do it, particularly with how much stronger that bench is. It's going to be fascinating. Six Nations is here. As I say, comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.